I'm, this is, I don't know what to call this, booth bombing? Okay, because there's photo bombing, but there's booth bombing. And and that's what I'm doing because we're just so excited that you're here on a summer day and you're here to hear about ideas and books and diversity and the importance. And as we like to say in the library world, free people read freely. And so thank you for doing that. And I know you have a few minutes before Meg, and you'll be able to hear from all types of specialists at the library. And Meg Metcalf has been wonderful about making sure that the Library of Congress collects everyone's stories and everyone's history. So thank you for proving that. And there's one more seat. This is like they used to do in church. There's one more seat up front. You put your hand up and the person will come. But thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. And take the bookmarks. So Meg?
I know that they already introduced, the librarian already introduced Meg, but we have procedures here. Okay. Welcome to the 23rd Annual Library of Congress National Book Festival, a place where everyone has a story. At this time, we ask that you turn off or silence your phones. For everyone's information, if you are looking for a restroom, it is over your left shoulder in the corner over there. We also want to notify you that this event will be recorded and your entry and presence at this program constitutes your consent to be filmed or otherwise recorded. Thank you for joining us. Historic newspapers are a rich yet often overlooked resource when it comes to studying LGBTQIA+ history. And in this presentation, Meg Metcalf, the Women's, Gender, and LGBTQIA+ Studies Librarian and Collection Specialist, will provide and recommend search tips and strategies focusing primarily on the kinds of unique resources that can be found in our Chronicling America historic newspaper collections. Meg, take it away.
For real this time. Hello everyone, my name is Meg Metcalf and I am the Women's, Gender, and LGBTQIA+ Studies Specialist and Reference Librarian at the Library of Congress, where I work in the newspaper and current periodical reading room. Our reading room was established in 1867, so it's actually older than the Jefferson Building itself. This is actually a picture from a historic newspaper. If you'd like to come visit us in person, we are located on the first floor of the Madison Building. Your library cards are free to register for. All you need is a photo ID, and then you can get digging into the collections that I'm about to show you. So this is the Chronicling America database. Today I'm going to be showing you how to use this database to research hidden corners of LGBTQIA history. Has anyone here used Chronicling America before? No, oh my goodness, I'm so excited. So, historic newspapers aren't really something that people think of when they're starting to do research, right? But newspapers were published by all sorts of communities in all sorts of languages. And in fact, we have over 20 languages in Chronicling America and growing each day. So people whose stories were not published in a book or left in a collection of personal papers, these stories often end up in newspapers. And just a quick note, we are due for an upgrade. So when you go to use Chronicling America, it may look a little something like this. So now on to the main portion of the event. What kind of hidden history can we find in historic newspapers? Oop. Did you know that you can discover the history of drag in historic newspapers? And actually, historian Channing Gerard Joseph uncovered the story of William Dorsey Swann, who is what historians are now saying the first known queen of drag, the first person to call themselves a queen of drag. And in these newspapers, on Chronicling America, we have descriptions of outfits, the names of people attending these early drag balls, and this is the late 1800s here in Washington, D.C. So most people think of New York when they think of drag culture, but actually we have quite a rich history here in DC. Another great topic that you can learn about are the history of bar raids and police oppression before Stonewall. So a lot of the popular narratives really center Stonewall as like the center and the start of LGBTQ resistance. But thanks to newspapers, we actually know that's not the case. I actually just published a research guide on a raid in Baltimore in 1955 where 162 people were arrested, including a lesbian for resisting arrest and assaulting a police officer. So this is actually a newspaper article from Chronicling America with the descriptions, and you can see this online freely. You can also find a history of the first Pride March that was held in New York City in 1970 on the one-year anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising. And I have to say, it's pretty interesting to see how they were covering the first Pride in 1970. You can learn a lot about a culture and about a community and about a time period by seeing the way that it's covered in different regional newspapers. Another favorite topic you can learn in Chronicling America is the history of LGBTQIA creatives and performers. So this is Dorothy Arzner and her partner of, I think, over 40 years, Marion Morgan. Dorothy was one of the first female directors in Hollywood, and they had a beautiful life together. Look at these gorgeous pictures, both from the library collections. And here we have Maud Allen, Ava LeGallienne. I just had to include this picture. I know it's not a newspaper, but look at these dog moms. Look at these dog moms. I can't. I just have to. Alla Natsamova. And these are all people whose collections, we have a lot of these collections at the library. So if you're discovering things in newspapers, you can then extend the research into other parts of the library. And a quick note, so you'll notice here, I mentioned that we have a lot of foreign language newspapers. You'll notice that the name is spelled differently. So that's going to get into our search techniques. Oh, sorry. When we get into our search techniques, that's going to be something we want to talk about, because when you're searching in foreign languages, that's going to necessarily change your search strategy a little bit. But I wanted to tease you with the collection before I get into search strategies, because one is slightly more exciting to some people than others. Another favorite topic of mine, I brought little zines today to hand out if you would like. So this is on Wewa, and so you can find a lot of information in newspapers about a Zuni Two-Spirit leader, Wewa, who came to DC in the 1880s, 1890s, and everyone related to Wewa as a woman. Met the president, was very accepted into Washington society, and then eventually they found out that Wewa was Two-Spirit, which we might understand as being sort of under the umbrella of transgender today. And so the newspapers, I have a bibliography in here of all the newspapers you can find. And not only can you find information about their visit, you can also find pictures and illustrations, which for trans history is pretty difficult. So that's something I love about newspapers, is I found images of queer and trans folks who don't have images that exist anywhere else. So I am quite fond. Another very topical subject you can find in newspapers is the history of book banning and censorship. This is actually, so this is from our Chronicling America database here, and this is the Nazis burning the library of the Institute for Sexology in Germany in 1933. And that's actually very important for LGBTQ studies, because the founder of that archive, Magnus Hirschfeld, is the person who coined the term transsexual. So we would not even necessarily be calling ourselves trans today if it wasn't for this library and this institute. So it's important that we have these resources to remember. So I know this presentation is mostly about newspapers, but I could not help but take a slight detour into periodicals. Newspapers are periodicals after all, and periodicals are probably my favorite thing. So the first pro-gay magazine in the United States was called One Magazine, and speaking of censorship, they were getting seized and banned by the post office, saying this is obscene, this is filth, you cannot distribute this. And so they took their case all the way to the Supreme Court, where eventually they were victorious. And this is important because this opens up a proliferation in LGBTQ publishing. So this first magazine started publication in 1951, 53. And then afterwards, you see publications coming out like The Ladder, the first lesbian publication in the US. By the way, we have full runs of both at the Library of Congress. So please come see me in the newspaper reading room. So these were originally put in our restricted Delta collection, but now are publicly accessible for everyone. We also have a wonderful and growing collection of early trans titles. So we have Turnabout, a magazine of transvestism. We have Drag, which was published by the Queens Liberation Front. So those were the drag queens and the trans folks involved in planning the first Pride. And we also have Transvestia, which was the first trans periodical in the US. And we continue on through the 70s. So we have a great collection that documents sort of the transition from homophile organizing in the 50s and 60s into lesbian feminism and gay liberation in the 1970s. And the 1980s and 90s and on are well represented. My friends. I spend a lot of time with these folks. And of course, don't forget foreign language periodicals. And we have these in print, in digital, on microfilm, across the library. And last but not least, before we get into the search tips, I know you're all waiting very patiently for that. We have comic books and zines. So the newspaper reading room actually has the largest publicly accessible comic book collection in the world. And included in that collection are titles like Gay Comics, Tales of the Closet, Dykes to Watch Out For, and all these early gay indie comics, because again, circling back around to censorship, you couldn't publish gay topics in mainstream comic books and expect them to be sold in a comic book store through the 80s because of the Comics Code Authority. And of course, even in regular comic books, we are finding queer figures. This is Dr. Margaret Chung, who was the first Chinese-American woman to become a medical doctor, and she was also a lesbian. And this is actually a picture from our 1943 Real Heroes comic book. So we have the dedicated gay collections, and then we have collections you have to dig through, like Chronicling America. Which brings me to the best part, search tips. Oh, sorry. Sorry, it's kind of heavy. My hand's a little sweaty. I'm sorry, you guys. So here are some tips and some search tips. The main thing when you're searching historic newspapers is you can't use terms like necessarily lesbian or heterosexual or homosexual. These terms just didn't exist yet. So you're not going to get anything if you search lesbian in the 1800s. And I will say that a lot of times these terms are going to pull up articles where people are being outed, people are being discovered, that sort of thing. So tread lightly. So one such term that I like to use, like if I wanted to look at lesbian history, would be female husband. So that actually brings up a lot of results. This is what it looks like in the search. This is what the results look like. So in my searching, I found the name of these two individuals, Frank and Gertrude. So having two names of two female husbands opens up my search options immensely. So I learned a lot about Frank and Gertrude. So Gertie was persistent in the fact that she married a man. Am I out of time? You're gonna switch the mic? I'm so sorry. It's okay, we're switching the mic. So these are all articles from Chronicling America, and we have all this information about the mothers saying they're gonna call the police on him and all this. And so basically what I'm understanding is that Frank was possibly a trans man or possibly transmasculine, and the way that they use pronouns in these articles is very interesting, because certain people will correctly pronoun them and certain people won't. And so then this leads me to other records, like government records, genealogical publications. So this is actually their marriage record here. So that's why it's important to actually, if you can get the name, you can take it pretty far from there. And there's so much more waiting to be discovered. This is just one couple. Imagine how many more are out there waiting to be discovered. And so that brings me to research tips and tricks. So you're not on your own. We have a lot of resources at the library to help you dig through this. I've been doing this for years. So I'm very happy to help people when they reach out. So I just wanted to earmark, we have our research guides. This one is for LGBTQ studies. We also have one for the newspaper reading room, where I work and where the comic books are, and where you should all come to do your research. And we have Ask a Librarian. So if you don't like to talk to people in person or on the phone, you can just email, and it's very low pressure. And I love when I get questions. So please send all the LGBTQ questions, because I would love to get them. All right, these are my links, and we're on to questions.
That is a button. This one is always on. So no button.
We will have 2 microphones, and we will come to you with the microphone.
Hi, my question is, you spoke a lot about the multiple foreign language resources that the periodical and newspaper collections have. What tools are available for those who want to research those collections but don't necessarily speak the language or don't know how to alter terminology in order to most effectively search those papers?
I am so glad that you asked me that. So I don't have internet in here, but in Chronicling America, for each article, you can click text on these foreign language newspapers, and then you get the OCR, which is not perfect, but then what I do is I put it into like a Google Translate, which is not perfect, but it helps with search terms. And the other part of that is we have language experts across the library who are willing to help us formulate those terms. So I'm constantly leaning on them. Sorry, it's like optical something recognition.
Optical character
Optical character,
recognition.
thank you, recognition. But basically it's like the plain text that the computer is grabbing from the historic image. So that's my trick.
Hi, as a future librarian myself, how did you know you wanted to be a librarian and specifically in queer studies?
That's a great question. So when I actually knew I wanted to be a librarian when I was in high school. I was one of those people who worked in the library. I worked at a bookstore. When I got to college, I asked the librarians, what do I do to be as successful as possible? And they were saying, major in something you're really passionate about researching. So I found women's and gender studies. I never looked back. And so I got my bachelor's and my master's in that, and then got my library degree at the same time. And I would say interdisciplinary research, anything to do with that makes you a great librarian, because a good researcher, a good librarian can work across, disciplines and departments and things like that. Yeah. All right. Questions? Should I take my bow? Oh, I'm making zines all day, y'all. So if you want some zines, come under where it says John Adams or Adams. I'm making zines all day. So please come see me. Yeah? Hi.
Is there anywhere available where we could access the slideshow online?
I'll post it. So, and I think this recording will be up. And you can always call the newspaper and periodical reading room and ask for Meg. And if I'm not there, they'll get me eventually. So, yeah, please come see me. Yeah.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
Thank you. Yeah, you showed a little booklet, in the beginning. Where can we get a copy?
So come see me after, and I will hand them out. I swear is that my fault? I hope not. I'm sorry, y'all. I wasn't even belting it out. Come see me after. And I also have the file for this, so I can email it, print it.
Thank you for the presentation. I found the term female husband to be really interesting. Have you found any other kind of interesting or ways of describing LGBT folks that you want to expand on?
Yeah, so I actually keep that list of terms on my LibGuide, or my research guide, I should say, and I'm constantly updating it because I come across terms that I otherwise wouldn't have known, and so I keep that list updated. So there's other terms like female impersonator, male mimic, femme mimic, things that were totally of a different time. And so finding those dated terms is also a matter of just reading a lot of newspapers too. And how were they talking about it in this certain place at this certain time? Because it's different depending on where in the country you are. Thank you.